again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Say You Want to Lead a Party? I'm your one Midwestern host, Nate.
I'm your other Midwestern host, Ragan.
And we are thrilled to introduce you to our build for this week. Now, before we dig in, just a reminder, thank you so much for watching. And please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down here. That helps us out immensely, helps other people discover the show. So let's get going. Ragan, who's up today?
All right, so we have Mahatma Gandhi, and Mahatma Gandhi was born in 1869 and was assassinated in 1948. He was born and raised in a Hindu family in India and educated as an attorney in London. To earn a living to support his family, he moved to South Africa. That's when he faced some really difficult challenges because he had always considered himself European or British first, Indian second, and he learned in South Africa, it's white South Africans first, then Asian South Africans, then colored South Africans, and colored in South Africa is not a bad word, and then Black South Africans. Gandhi spent 21 years in South Africa fighting for the equal rights for Indians and did not consider Black South Africans to be a part of his protest until later on in his life, or later on in his time in South Africa. In 1915, he returned to India to lead the way for an independent India. Gandhi engaged in nonviolent protest for a nationwide campaign for easing poverty, expanding women's rights, building religious and ethnic amity, and ending untouchability. Gandhi also engaged in some questionable activities and also made some rather troubling statements. In fact, when he was living in South Africa, he used a term in South Africa that is the equivalent of the N-word here in America. Also, he considered Black South Africans to be the lowest, sort of almost on level with untouchables in India. But yeah, it's sort of like with our PGT Beauregard character, learning and understanding that if you're trying to fight for the rights of one ethnic group or one racial group, you also need to join up with other ethnic and racial groups because that's the only way that you're going to be successful. A lot of our civil rights leaders learned that. Malcolm X learned that after he went to Mecca. Martin Luther King understood that. So it is.
Fred Hampton.
Yeah, Fred Hampton. A lot of people really did learn that you cannot do it alone. All right, you want to get into your build?
Absolutely. So, for the Mahatma, for Mohandas K. Gandhi, I decided to make him a forest gnome wizard of the School of Theurgy, which is not officially a published class. I'm digging into the unearthed arcana here, but I am really compelled by this specific archetype, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. So class is wizard. Race is forest gnome, which grants bonuses to dexterity and intelligence, which is very helpful for a wizard. For background, I decided to make him a sage. That's a useful, it gives some useful skills specifically for it's got some synergy with the wizard. It also informs my idea of his background. He was a man of the law. So I would probably role play this character as something akin to a utilitarian, compassionate party lawyer who is focused very much on peaceful solutions, arbitrating disputes both within and without of the party, and advocating non-compliance with unjust courses of action from his perspective. And perhaps if he's talked with the party from the party's perspective as well. Three big reasons I chose him. Number one, I was very interested in a character that worked primarily with magic, but from a defensive perspective. So spells like the obvious spells like shield or mage armor, things like that to help yourself. But you can also utilize larger, wider, much more powerful spells as well to help buff the party, as it were. Only using violence as a very last resort. I forgot to mention, yes, in terms of level, as he worked for so long in nonviolent, non-compliant, non-cooperative protests for so long, I decided to make him level 20. I thought the idea of the School of Theurgy for the wizard is, again, not an official class. So talk to your DM if you want to incorporate it into your particular party. It's a very cool concept of a wizard who worships a deity. They are able to choose a cleric background to follow, or cleric domain rather to follow. With Gandhi, it seemed obvious to latch on to the domain of peace, which is in and of itself very supportive of the party as well. Very interesting combo of a cleric and a wizard. Third big reason is pacifist characters, which are in general very interesting to me to bring into D&D for a couple of reasons. The game itself has three pillars, if you will: combat, social encounters, and exploration. So conflict and violence, specifically in combat, are kind of an inevitable part of the experience. So playing a character committed to doing no violence is possibly just going to create a lot of friction between not only the characters, possibly the players and the DM as well. So it could be pretty frustrating for gaming groups to incorporate a non-violent character into a game, unless you take the time to really understand the dynamics of the group and talking to your DM to find potential solutions. A good way to think about it is, what role is this character wanting to play in a party? How can they help the group succeed? It is a cooperative game. Sometimes it's fun to role play being an inconsiderate jerk, but try not to be one on purpose, you know?
Yeah.
So with Gandhi in particular, I decided to make him the combat buffer, the support caster, and will only use violence at the absolute last resort. In terms of ability scores for a wizard, intelligence is very important. Dexterity and constitution. Intelligence is at 20. Dex and con are both at 18. Wiz is pretty useful. It governs perception, which is the most ruled skill in the game. So that is right there in the middle of the pack. And then as a gnome, he's not a very strong character, so I put strength and charisma last. Charisma might be a little bit controversial because Gandhi was such a compelling leader. So that's why I'm eager to see what you did with this character, Ragan. For initiative, he's got +4 thanks to his dexterity. His AC is a 14, which at level 20 is not very high. So again, defensive magic. 5 spells that I thought would be very interesting and helpful for the party are all kind of externally motivated. They grant temporary hit points. They protect magically. Otaluki's Resilient Sphere, for one thing, is it basically puts somebody in a magic bubble that is very, very difficult to escape out from. So you can either use that around the party to protect them, or you can put that around a particularly troublesome threat, and wait until any other threats are dispensed with by the other members of the party to deal with that last threat. Maybe you might be able to convince them to not fight anymore. The last big spell is probably one of the biggest spells in the game. It is a 9th level spell. It is the Almighty Wish. So it is very, very powerful. So that's why it's very important to word it carefully. So I've had the opportunity to use a wish spell myself in another game. The party talked about it a lot before we used it, like a lot, because of the potential monkey paw problem, right? So, but that is Gandhi as I saw him.
All right, very, very cool. So for my Mahatma Gandhi, for race, I chose Vidalkin. And the reason why I chose Vidalkin, we'll get into it a little bit later, but it just seemed out of all the races to make sense, because originally I was going to go for Asamar, but Asamars are celestial. And based on my research, Gandhi was trying to be spiritual, but he was not a saint. For his class, I chose Twilight Cleric level 20. So I didn't want to, like you were saying earlier, Nate, there are so many classes that are fighters. And so because of his nonviolent stance, I decided Cleric went with that spirituality that he was attempting to achieve. Also, he was one of the people that you would send out into the front lines. He was part of the Boer Wars, which we talked about with Winston Churchill. Right. He was also a stretcher bearer for World War I, and I want to say also World War II. So he was that person that was out there on the front trying to help people, and that's what your cleric is there for. It's to be out there on the front lines. So he was imperfect. He was attempting to be spiritual. He was a nonviolent protester, and he was also working to help the people find peace. Now for his stats, I chose, actually for this one, first time ever, I did a roll for his abilities. So he has a 20 wisdom, 20 constitution, 20 dex, 15 strength, 15 intelligence, and 13 charisma. So yeah, I rolled high on some of those, and then others, because I had so many ability score improvements, I could just hit that as many times as I wanted to. Vidalkins have both the wisdom and the intelligence. I think it's like a +2 on wisdom and a +1 on intelligence. Well, I don't need both wisdom and intelligence, especially for a cleric. So I really hit that wisdom, really hit the constitution and the dexterity, because again, he's going to be my frontline guy. So I need him in that armor, and I need him to be able to take those hits. His initiative is a +5, and his armor class is an 18. Without the armor, it would be a 17. For his spells, I chose Moonbeam, Protection from Good and Evil, Mass Healing Word, Divination, and Stone Shape. Now, Stone Shape I like because Stone Shape, in our campaigns, there are so many stone buildings that you better be able to try and get away or through or something. You gotta get in there. So that's why I had Stone Shape for that. Protection from good and evil. A willing creature that you touch is protected against aberration, celestials, elementals, fays, fiends, and the undead. So you're protecting, again, a member of your party. Mass Healing Word. For that one, you can actually help a lot of the members of your team with this one. This one, you're able to help 6 creatures of your choice that you see within range. and they're able to regain hit points equal to 1d4 plus your spell casting modifier. And for this one, the modifier is, if I can get it to come up.
Should be +5.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I forgot that. Thank you.
Whiz.
Huh?
20 whiz, 20 everything.
Yeah, it was almost a 20 for everything.
Whew.
Yeah. Moonbeam is
That's a neat
where
one.
you're,
That's a neat one. I like that one.
yeah, it is actually a cool one. Creature enters the spell area or starts their turn in that area. They're engulfed in this ghostly flame that causes searing pain. So you have to do a Constitution saving throw. For my Moonbeam, you got to hit 19 or higher. You take 2d10 radiant damage on a failed save and half as much on a successful one. So that actually works in my favor for that one. And then divination is where you're able to call on a celestial and ask them a question, and they have to be truthful. But here's the thing. You have to be careful about how you ask it. And secondly, they can be cryptic in their response. Yes, it is truthful, but you might have to figure out, oh my gosh, what are they actually saying?
That's like ask the DM about the plot, basically.
Yeah, basically that's what you're looking at. And talking about all the ability scores on one of my rolls, I rolled a 20, 2 6s and 2 4s. But DnD Beyond is only going to give you up to 18. So that actually helped because, again, my Vidalcan already has +2 and a +1, and then my cleric. So I just kept hitting those hard. And yeah, so this character was actually able to get up to 203 hit points. Yeah. So yeah, I really made him my tank for the party.
Cool.
So that's my Mahatma Gandhi.
Yeah. What I found interesting there is you also, I'm actually curious, what background did you make him?
That was the tricky part because prior to him going back to India, he had a relatively comfortable lifestyle. So it was like a choice of, do I make him the comfortable lifestyle or do I make him the impoverished lifestyle? And I went with folk hero because that's essentially what he is now. He's a folk hero.
Yeah. Okay. Because he did identify with, like, he consciously adopted his dress code, specifically that cloth that he wore, in order to identify with India's rural poor population.
Right.
As a way to sort of inspire them as well.
Well, also, you can't fight for a thing if you don't understand a thing.
Yes.
And while you have a lot of people today saying, well, when I was your age, I had a job where I only made $6 an hour. Well, $6 an hour in your time is very different than $6 an hour now. You have to understand what people are going through now and the choices and the sacrifices they have to make in order to live their everyday lives. And he, I believe, adopted that so that he could understand and comprehend, but also at the same time, it was, I'm fighting for this, so I'm going to be a part of this. And that's sometimes what we seem to be missing in modern day. What is it?
Because
73 years later.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
Since he died, since he was murdered.
Right.
1948.
Right.
Yeah.
He was 78 when he was shot.
I ask because I'm curious about like how he would function in the party as like the Twilight cleric, but it does seem like that archetype, that it's one of the new ones
Yes.
in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
Yes.
And it's all about it seems to be all about like rallying your party to face the darkness,
Right.
like we've talked about before.
Yeah, because originally I was looking at order or peace divination. And as I was reading about that in Tasha's Cauldron, I was like, that's not quite him. And then when I saw Twilight, I was like, yeah, okay, Team Jacob for life.
Sure.
His from the research, it just seemed to make more sense to go Twilight.
He's hotter, he's nicer, like he's not a controlling a-hole.
Right,
like, yeah.
Boo to Edward, boo.
This is not an Edward. We do not stand Edward on this show.
No,
we do not.
No, not at all.
So it's interesting as well that you hit, and it's so important that you mentioned it, and I really appreciate it, his own shortcomings. He was not a saint either. There's a section here on your character sheet, which you might be able to see on my phone, not zoomed in on this little PDF here, labeled flaws.
Oh yeah.
With him, it is, I edited one of the flaws for the stage background to comport with that. I overlook my own biases. Yes.
He very much had biases. He very much had prejudices. He also engaged in. Okay, so how it was described in my research is that he was so obsessed with proving his celibacy that he slept naked in a bed next to his underage grandniece. And one of the questions that was brought up was, did she have the ability to say no? Was she legally considered to have the ability to say no due to her age? I know that there are a lot of people who don't want his statues up because he did do some very questionable things. And what I have to say to that is, yes, all of our folk heroes had very serious flaws. And we have whitewashed, sorry to use that term, but we have just put this veneer on a lot of their stories and fed it to children for year after year after year after year. And then when they become adults and they're developing their own role models and heroes and discover this is a human being, it starts to cause, it causes all sorts of problems and makes you question a lot of things. And I think that we're doing everybody a disservice by trying to say, well, this person was just absolutely perfect. No human being on this planet is perfect. And I'm not saying that every human being would have done what Gandhi did. What I am saying is that we all are capable of great things, but we're all very capable of horrific things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had a teacher, well, of course I had a teacher, but when I was in high school, my history teacher, Mr. Bell, actually was his name. I cannot believe that I actually remembered his last name. Mr. Bell said something that still sticks with me today. And he says that what happened in Nazi Germany is not even the full scope of the horrors that humans are able to unleash onto each other. That sticks with me to this day.
Yeah. Yes, I can't add to that.
I go dark. I go
I mean,
dark.
well, another angle I'm sort of curious about, and I'm curious about what your thoughts are, because you may have some insight into this as well, but playing a character with a pacifist bent in the campaign that Ragan and I, one of the two campaigns that Ragan and I are in right now, everybody, I am playing a Warforged paladin of the Oath of Redemption, who is another character that uses violence as a last resort. Um, he has the soldier background, so he is trained in combat, and he is a fearsome threat. He's very strong. He's got 20 Constitution. He's got so many hit points, even at level 13. Um, he is a beast, but he is also he tries hard to lead folks to the light. And I'm wondering about how you're finding playing against a pacifist character who wants to, because I was trying to find a way to bring it up, but hell, I'll just ask. So what do you think about possibly role playing against a pacifist character in theory or in practice?
So in practice, the way that our party is set up in Phoenix's circus, wow, try to say that 3 times fast. For our group, it doesn't matter as far as I feel or as I'm concerned, that he does not want to engage in these battles or in these attacks. He's trying to do it. He's doing more protection versus, full on force. And my character, which is a fighter, gunslinger, it's kind of like, all right, just so long as you're helping the party, I don't care.
Yeah.
Just so long as you're helping the party. He is, of course, one of Nate's characters. So, of course, Ragan's character hates him, but doesn't but doesn't hate him because he's a pacifist. Hates him because he seems like a pretentious snob, and that's all that my character Benoit really cares about. Where my character gets ticked off and where I think the party gets ticked off is the rage barbarian machine that goes in without thinking first, because every single time your barbarian goes in without thinking is like, whoa, now we're in the middle of a battle. So if I had to choose between pacifist and rage machine, I'm going pacifist. I'd rather have that on my team.
Cool. Just curious.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, because I was in the lead up to in trying to put this together. I had some difficulty in putting this character together to just try to. I looked up different accounts of players attempting to create pacifist characters and it going kind of sideways. So I was just wondering what you thought. So thank you for sharing that.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of So You Want to Lead a Party. So glad that you could learn a little bit more about trying to create a pacifist character. Like Nate says, it all depends. It all depends. The party and your DM. It's no D&D game is like any other D&D game, even if you're playing it with the exact same people. So thank you all so very much for joining us, and we will see you next week. All right, bye.
Bye. Say good night, Ragan.
Good night, Ragan. Thank you for joining us on another episode of So You Want to Lead a Party. Please click the subscribe button, the like button, and don't forget to ring the bell. And if you enjoyed this week's episode, check out last week's video or the YouTube suggested videos.